In this episode, the surface of Mars covers about 150 million square kilometers, which is almost the same as the surface of dry land on Earth, or 1/3 of the entire surface of the planet Earth. There will be no road infrastructure on Mars to facilitate transportation, so traveling long distances will require specialized off-road vehicles. In the game, we tried to keep the balance between locations known from real Mars maps and enjoyable gameplay. That's why many regions in the game are located at shorter distances from each other than in reality. For example, in real life, the distance between the Melascasma region of Valles Marineris and the Gale crater is about 12,000 kilometers, while in our game it's about 12 kilometers. Still, this is an open-world game with a vast procedural terrain, the traversing of which takes time and requires specialized vehicles to move around, such as the Heavy Rover, ATV, or even a jetpack. In today's episode, we will also visit Michael, a member of the Valoria 1 crew struggling to service a real off-road rover in a simulated Martian high seas mission.
Hey everyone, this is Michael. In this clip from Sol 6 of the Valoria 1 mission, I'm showing off my favorite bit of tech, the Rover. This RC rover was built to help the crew explore the extremely rocky terrain around the habitat. It has a very flexible chassis, all-wheel steering, and a movable camera that sends live video back to a desktop screen in the hab. However, as you can tell, the rover's seen better days, since it was used in prior missions and suffered some wear. You can see the camera's been duct taped on after its mount was damaged, and the battery terminals are actually hooked into a cordless drill battery. I found the original batteries weren't stored correctly, so they wouldn't charge, but I did discover that the drill battery worked as a substitute. So once I knew this, I made it my personal mission to get this rover up and running again. I'll let my past self explain exactly how repairs progressed during the mission.
Most vehicles in the game are controlled by a specialized PCB board, which can become damaged during an accident. In order to fix it, the player needs to detach it and fix it on his workbench. The vehicle cannot be operated or charged without the PCB.
So progress update on the rover. It is Sol 11, and thanks to the availability of tons of power and a little extra time, I was able to complete the connection between my makeshift rover battery and the terminals. These connections back here are really solid. I found a certain type of connector that fit really well into the metallic tabs that were there for the original battery. I've sort of zip-tied these wires together, and then up here I've made these connections, which are really nice because they actually pop in and out with relative ease. You can pull them out with your hands, but they're not as likely to pop out due to vibration or anything like that. So I'm glad that worked out. And as you can see, if I flip the switch back here, we've got power. So now all that remains is for me to actually test drive the system, make sure everything else works. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to bring it outside, or maybe the day after that.
After making secure cable connections to the battery, I was able to test drive the rover around the habitat. The crew had this hilarious photo of Kevin, my fellow engineer, and got a kick out of plastering it onto the rover. When the view here pans over to my desk, you can see that I'm receiving live video from the rover's camera, so I can control it from a first-person view. It reminded me a lot of the remote control for the Heavy Rover in Occupy Mars, which has a similar camera function. As you can tell from the feed, I actually ended up driving into the lab section of the dome without needing to look behind me. Since the camera can rotate, it's really easy to get a view of your surroundings, so driving in first person was no problem. I'd say this was a pretty successful test.
The remote control functionality will be essential on Mars. Sometimes your vehicles may be needed in a place which is hard to reach. It may also be the only way of getting things done during a sandstorm or in a low oxygen situation. Without the relay stations, the controller range will be limited, but should be enough to perform the most critical work from a safe distance.
So another update on the Rover. If you haven't seen it already, I proved that this thing can drive around just fine with the new battery I've attached onto it. However, recently I charged up the battery all the way to the 20 volts that it can go up to, whereas the normal battery takes about 18 volts max. So I'm not sure whether overcharging the Rover like this is going to be a problem. I contacted the Slovakian company Robotech Vision, who made this Rover, and they said it may be okay, but if I open it up, the shell here, I can find some converters inside that bring down the voltage for the rest of the components. I just have to check that the output voltage is 5 volts for one of the systems and 12 volts for the other. I don't remember which, but as long as that's fine, I'll be good to use this battery even at its maximum charge. So that'll be great. I also modified the mount on the front of the Rover. The camera here used to be held on by duct tape because the 3D printed plastic here snapped. But I discovered that I could just put in a metal bracket here, bolted in with the bolts that were already there. And I also took this 3D printed component and cut a slot into it for the bracket, and then just kind of jammed a screw through here after drilling a hole for it. It's a fairly sturdy mount. Hopefully later today, since we've got an EVA scheduled for this evening, I'll hopefully be able to drive it outside while I sit in the hab and view the camera feed. Neat thing about the camera too is that it actually can move left and right 180 degrees, so that'll be neat to test out outside. So yeah, we'll see how this goes.
The heavy Rover is equipped with 2 cameras, a rear view camera, invaluable when reversing with a trailer, and a crane camera, necessary for precise robotic arm movements.
So another Rover update. I opened up the internals on this Rover and figured out that the control unit is getting 5 volts while the drive system is getting 12 volts, just as it should. Even though we're using a 20 volt battery, the converters inside are doing just fine with that. So if I switch it on, it just starts humming along nicely. And so that means when we go on EVA today, we'll have a little extra charge on our hands. So that'll be great. We'll see how that goes.
On Mars, combustion engines will not work, so electric vehicles are the only feasible way to go. Remember to charge your vehicles often to avoid range anxiety and a situation in which you are stranded in the middle of nowhere. Of course, you can always build solar panels on the way, as long as you have the necessary resources.
Near the end of Sol 13, I stayed inside the hab while 4 of my crewmates stepped outside for an EVA, taking the Rover with them. I was genuinely surprised at how well it handled the terrain. It could clamber over almost any rocks that I threw at it. It seems that I needed to put in a little extra maintenance work though, since the forward steering gave out partway through this drive. I later found out that it was just a bolt that I needed to tighten to fix it. But it drove around happily for about 5 to 7 minutes before the battery gave out. But even with that short time, I was pretty happy that my stint as a rover mechanic had gotten this far. If only I had more time on mission, I would have tried adding some additional battery capacity so I could drive around for just a bit longer. I think the main takeaway from my experience with this rover is that vehicles in a future Mars colony will not only need to be robust, but be simple to repair when something inevitably breaks down. Having the steering fail on a little RC rover near the hab is no big deal, but the same situation in a rideable heavy rover would be far more serious. I'd recommend you bring repair materials along for the ride in case unexpected situations arise in your own efforts to occupy Mars.